Hello, my name is Malik Abbasdab. Welcome to PM Express. It is an institution which is as old as mankind itself, but it is one which has changed over time. I'm talking about marriage, and specifically, I'm talking about Islamic marriage. What are the rights of a woman in Islamic marriage? Are the things that we hear about subjugation of Muslim women true? How true are these things? When we come back, I'm taking a short break. When we come back, I will introduce to you a guest who has all the answers in this area. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. We are talking marriage and Islamic marriage. My guest is, he doesn't need any introduction. He is the only Sheikh Mustafa Abdul Hamid, an Islamic scholar and a lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. Sheikh, you're welcome. Welcome to PM Express. I think this is the first time I'm hosting you on this show.
Yes, absolutely.
It's an honor.
Absolutely.
When we talk about marriage in Islam, what do we mean? What's the Islamic concept of marriage?
Well, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. In Islam, marriage is, if you want, the legal union, okay, between a man and a woman, based on the fulfillment of certain conditions. And once those conditions are fulfilled, then we say that these two are married. And those conditions are normally about 4. Okay, so that's what brings about marriage in Islam.
And the injunction is clear between man and woman.
And woman, exactly. And I emphasized man and woman because, you know, the world has gone full cycle.
Absolutely.
And now we are supposed to have marriages between men and women and women. But I'm saying that as far as Islam is concerned, when we talk about marriage, we are talking strictly about a union between a man and a woman based on the fulfillment of certain conditions.
Okay, so let's see what those conditions are, such that if those conditions do not obtain, the suggestion is they can't be married.
They can, or the marriage is invalid, okay, or ab initio, that it doesn't exist.
Okay.
And these conditions are: 1, offer and acceptance. In Islam, marriage is envisaged as a contract. Okay, just like a normal contract that you have in businesses, in everything. Marriage in Islam is a contract between a man and a woman. Okay, and therefore the critical ingredient of a contract is offer and acceptance.
Okay.
That the man must offer to marry the woman, and the woman must accept to marry the man. Okay, so in Islam, it is envisaged that the man and the woman who are supposed to be in union must have met or must have seen each other before a marriage comes into being.
That's a very strange proposition,
yes,
for even Muslims,
yeah,
because consistently you hear fathers just give out their daughters without their consent. I'm hearing you say that cannot be one of the conditions under which marriage is valid.
It is not. If you force your daughter to marry a man against her wish, that marriage is invalid ab initio. In the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of his disciples came to him and said that he's been giving a woman to marry. And he asked him, have you seen her? And he said, no. And he says, you ought to see her. Okay, so the element of the meeting is critical. I can understand that in the 21st century, because of the globalization, people live in America, somebody is in Ghana and can send a word that I want a woman to marry. And therefore they can contract a woman that he hasn't seen. But even in the modern days, they send pictures and then he will look at the picture and agree, and then he will call the woman on phone or send her an email. So somehow,
but which still satisfies the condition.
Exactly, that's the
because
point
the man is still making the offer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So number one condition is offer and acceptance.
That's pure contract.
Yes, it's a contract. Marriage in Islam is a contract. It's envisaged as a contract.
There must be an offer, an unconditional offer, and there must be an unconditional acceptance of that offer.
Yes, that's the basic ingredient. Now, after the offer and acceptance, the next thing is what we call the bride price. In Islam, it is called the mahar. Okay? And that one is a bridal gift that the man gives to the woman. And that one is normally set by the woman. You know, in our modern day Muslim marriages, it is the fathers, the parents, you go and see them and they say,
and
we have set it up.
Bring this.
But strictly according to Islamic law, it is the girl, the woman herself, who decides what her mahar is between she and her husband. Yes. So she tells the husband, you ought to pay me 5,000 or 3,000 as my mahar or whatever. And then the man pays that money. So that money strictly is not for the parents. It's supposed to be for the woman, strictly. So that's number two. Wow. So the contract, the mahar, but I must quickly add that the mahar can be postponed. You can either pay part of it and then in the course of the marriage pay the rest, or you can pay all of it ab initio, etc., etc.
Depending on your capacity.
There's flexibility. And I'll explain why all that is. So that's number two. Then number three is the presence of what are called the wali, the marriage guardians of both the man and the woman. Wow. Okay. However, some law, especially Maliki law, says that if a woman is an adult, for example, a divorcee, she's been married before and she's divorced, she doesn't need
any
guardian to give her out in marriage. She can't stand on her own as her own marriage guardian. Are you okay? So number three is the marriage guardian. Then the final one is the presence of what we call irreproachable witnesses. Okay. Mostly the schools agree that we can have 2 witnesses on both sides. So 4 people witnessing the marriage. And of course, to use our modern day parlance, the sheikh or the malam who ties,
who bless
the knot. Finish. So these are the 4 critical ingredients. Once these things are in existence, a valid marriage has come in.
That sounds beautiful.
Yes.
In practice, though,
yes.
does this happen?
It doesn't happen. In our communities, you know that marriage has become more expensive, very, very expensive, because now we do things like kayan lele, we do all these lefe, we do all these
Where
parties.
did those come from?
The lefe is supposed to indicate that when she comes into my home, when the woman comes into my home, I have the capacity to clothe her. That's all. It's supposed to be a minimal indicator.
Symbolism.
Exactly. Of the capacity of the man to take care of the woman if he eventually marries her. So it is not supposed to be something very expensive.
How did that metamorphosize into an avenue to show ostentation and all of that?
Of course. I mean, these are the influences of modernization, globalization, culture.
Have the ulamas
all
failed?
Of those things. Well, I wouldn't say that they have failed. It just so happens that the world has evolved and gotten to this point where if you do, but there are people, I can tell you, in these parts of the world, especially in Ghana, who still marry according to the strict provisions that I have enumerated. Because the Prophet said that the cheapest mahar is the most blessed. In other words, the easiest mahar to pay is the most blessed. So a parent could charge, say, 5 cedis as mahar. Tell them. So once you bring the 5 cedis, the witnesses come, they sit in a mosque, they say the prayers, and then they join the 2 together. That's your wife.
Because a friend of mine who was getting married, he went with his brothers to go see the wife's parents, and then when he got there, the wife's father had information they were coming. So he just invited 2 other imams. And then when they go there, they said they are doing the awri, they are tying the knot. And he was shocked. They said, produce 200 Ghana cedis. That's your dowry.
Yes.
And he was like, what?
Yes. Exactly.
And then that was it. Then he and his brother, they just sat down, put down some money, and then it was done.
Thank you.
Simple.
So that's a valid marriage. In Islam, that's what we call a valid marriage. All the other things that we add, kayan lele, kudin sarana, kudin kai, kudin this, all of those things are adulterations of culture, modernization. Nowadays, we've even imported the wedding gowns and the exchange of rings and all of those things. Well, who am I? If you are capable of doing it, so be it. I am just telling you what the ingredients of a valid marriage.
This simplified process that you just gave us.
Yes.
Have your offer and acceptance. Have the man see the woman where that is possible. Pay your mahar. Just get your witnesses and get it done. Would you not be vilified and lampooned as miserly and stingy and unserious?
In Dagbon, such marriages are called punlole amelia. You know, punlole is behind the door. Like it's like.
So they actually named it.
Yeah, that you hid in order to get married, but Allah doesn't care. The marriages are for the sake of Allah. And once that happens, you satisfy the conditions as stipulated by the Almighty Allah. I don't think that anybody should.
So man enjoys a certain complicated way of doing things.
Exactly. It's we who have brought all these complications upon ourselves. Otherwise, marriage in Islam is supposed to be easy. Why? Because in Islam, I wouldn't say that marriage is compulsory, but I would say that it is a strongly recommended institution. Because the Prophet said that every young person capable of marrying should marry. Are you following me? So it is what you may call mandub. Mandub meaning highly recommended, as opposed to wajib, which is compulsory. It's not necessarily compulsory. But you see, because of human biology and how Allah has created us, and sex and all of that is part of our biological makeup. If you are capable of, in the development of Sufism, mystical Muslims who dedicated themselves solely to the cause of Allah, refrained from marrying because they believe that women and children will be a distraction to their devotion to God.
Just as we had in the Catholic Church.
Exactly.
That people can choose to go celibate.
Celibate, okay. But in Islam, celibacy is discouraged because it is difficult to uphold. But of course, if you believe that you have the capacity not to commit zina, which, by the way,
can commit to it and
Islam,
stick to it.
Yeah, in Islam, is one of the capital offenses. Then no problem, you can decide to be celibate. But because it is difficult, the Prophet encourages all of us.
Because we are told la takrabu zina.
Absolutely.
That don't go near
it.
Okay, so now we go through the simple process, and then the wife comes home.
Yeah.
Consistently, we are told that Muslim women are subjugated, and reference is made to countries such as Saudi Arabia, Iran, and all of those other societies as examples of the subjugation to which women are subjected, especially in Islamic marriages. Yeah. Is there credence to this? Does the religion provide grounds upon which women are subjugated?
Well, of course not. If you read Surah An-Nisa, Quran chapter 4, I think you have a Quran here. The very beginning of Surah An-Nisa, and I would want you yourself to read it for the viewers. Read Quran 4 from verse 1.
Yes. O mankind, be dutiful to your Lord, who created you from a single person, Adam, and from him, Adam, he created his wife, Hawa, and from them both he created many men and women. And fear Allah, through whom you demand your mutual rights.
Right. I want you to stop there. Fear the Almighty Allah, from whom you demand your mutual rights. Okay, that's number one. Now, let's go back to Baqarah. The president has taught us what he calls evidence-based.
Okay, Surah Al-Baqarah, that's
yes.
The cow.
Yes.
That's Quran chapter 2.
Yes, 2 to 8. Okay, he says, read this one. And he says, and they, that is women.
Okay.
Read from there.
Okay. And they, women, have rights over their husbands as regards living expenses, similar to those of their husbands over them. As regards obedience and respect.
Exactly. So, you see, for Surah An-Nisa said it, Baqarah has also said it, that men have rights over women and women have rights over men. So, it cannot be the case that women are supposed to be subjugated. That is not the intent of these verses. It says that you have rights over me, I also have rights over you. So what it is simply is that a woman's rights, okay, or a woman's rights are the man's responsibilities. And a man's responsibilities are the woman's rights. That's how it works in an Islamic union.
I'm getting education that even I, Muslim, didn't know. You're watching PM Express. When we come back, I'm taking a short break. When we come back, Sheikh will be telling us what are those rights that a woman is entitled to in a marriage situation. You're watching PM Express. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back. You're welcome back. We are discussing marriage in Islam. Our guest is Sheikh Mustafa Abdul Hamid. Sheikh, before we went on the break, we're talking about the rights that accrue to a woman in marriage. And in your introductory comment, you spoke about marriage being a contract in Islam. Under a contract, both parties often have rights
and responsibilities.
Yes. Let's look at the rights and responsibilities that exist for both the man, but specifically the woman. And then we can see how is it that women are said to be subjugated.
Well, first of all, the paramount right of a woman in a marriage is her right to maintenance. Okay? Her right to maintenance in the sense that it is a man who maintains a woman. Her feeding, her clothing, you know, in the modern parlance, her makeup, her days, and all of that. And in Islam, it doesn't matter if the woman is rich or a billionaire. Okay,
it is still the man's responsibility. It is your responsibility. The Quran states explicitly in the same Surah An-Nisa in verse 34 that men are a degree above women because they spend their money to maintain them. Because that is supposed to be the hierarchy of leadership within a family home. Okay, so you cannot be, Allah cannot make you leader with no responsibility. Leadership comes with responsibility. So your primary responsibility is the maintenance of your wife. So you see why I said that the right of a woman is the responsibility of the man and vice versa. So the woman's right is her right to maintenance, and then your responsibility as husband is your responsibility to maintain her. Okay, that's number one. Number two is that the woman has a right to self-development. So whether she wants to obtain Islamic education in our Makaranta schools, or she wants to be educated and be a doctor, a lawyer, etc., etc. So she has a right to self-development. And yes, and it is the responsibility of the man to help her to develop. Because the Prophet said that knowledge is the lost property of a Muslim, and we should seek it wherever we find it. I'm sure that's the most quoted absolutely
hadith. Exactly. Yeah. So how are you supposed to obtain knowledge if you do not have the right to pursue it? You ought to pursue it before you obtain it. So a woman has a right to self-development, and that is also important.
And the husband has a responsibility to help her to
pursue that development, unless the two of you mutually agree on certain terms. Are you following me? Or the man is incapable. etc., etc. You remember I said that marriage in Islam is envisaged as a contract. So the marriage contract can also stipulate all the
Why is this contract
of the relationship.
I thought this contract is simply a verbal contract.
No, it's not. In the time of the Prophet and even thereafter, people enter into written contracts. You know,
Marriage contract,
yes.
and it is written.
Yes, you remember,
spelling out everybody's rights and responsibilities.
Exactly. You see that in the Quran, even debt, contracting a debt. Allah tells us in the Quran that even when you go to borrow money from your friend, write it down. That is the nature of Islam. Say, write down. Don't just come to Malik Dabu and say, Bani 20,000, go business Amuna Baka. And then you go away. If there's confusion, what is the proof and so on? Islam encourages us to document our contracts. Are you following me? So you are supposed to, especially because the basic tenet of Islam is the concept of easiness. What Allah says in the Quran, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha, that He does not desire hardships for us, but only ease. And therefore, in Islam, Allah does not impose one condition on every single person, because Allah recognizes that people's circumstances differ. And that is why He allows you. He says that you should enter into the contract between the two of you, because it is the two of you who understand your circumstances. And therefore, you are best able to carve up a contract that will let you stay in peace and tranquility.
So do a contract, a written contract for both parties.
For both parties. And then the man keeps it and the woman keeps it. For example, there was a granddaughter of the Prophet called Sukaina, who in her marriage contract with her husband stipulated that the husband stipulated in the contract that he has given out his right to a second marriage. You know, Islam allows polygyny.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see, but you can, in your contract with your wife, you can give it out, even though Maliki disagrees. But Hanafi and other schools say that if on your own, because polygyny itself is not the norm, it's the exception.
And when you say polygyny, that's the right to marry more than one.
More than one wife. So two people can even enter a contract, a marriage contract that says that I give up my right to marry a second.
And you're talking about Sukaya's husband's
marriage contract. So the business of marriage contract I'm talking about is not a modern concept. It's as old as the establishment
of Islam. So this guy
Islam
committed that he will give up his right to marry a second wife.
Exactly. So that later on, if he says that I want to marry a second wife, the woman can sue for divorce on the basis of that.
Wow. On the basis of a violation of the
terms of the marriage contract. You see, so that is why Islam permits divorce. I know you would come to the question of divorce. It is because of the possibility of violations. That is why divorce exists as a remedy, even though the Prophet said that of all permitted things, divorce is the most hateful. In other words, divorce should be the very last resort.
Okay.
Are you following me? So the woman has a right to self-development. The man has a responsibility to help her to develop. The man has a right for the proper care and maintenance of his home, for which his money is being paid. You see, so he spends his money. So it is also the responsibility of a woman to keep the man's home and keep it to satisfaction. Okay? If children occur in the marriage, it is the responsibility of the woman to make sure that she nurtures the children to expectation. And of course, in Islam, the conjugal business is key. Okay, Allah says in the Quran, your wives are a tilth unto you, so go into them. So conjugal responsibility is also, so Islam encourages men and women not to use sex as a weapon
of a dispute.
Exactly.
If you have a dispute, you can't use it as a weapon.
Because the man should have unfettered access to your body. Unless, of course, as we know, you are ill, you are in menstruation, etc., etc., etc. And the woman also has, absolute access to
the
her
man.
husband's body, and etc., etc. And that is why a man who forsakes his conjugal responsibility for a period exceeding 4 months ultimately nullifies their marriage.
Wow.
Yes.
Because the woman has a right to it.
To it. So if you abstain from performing your conjugal duties for a period exceeding 4 months without justifiable basis or justifiable reason, the woman can sue for divorce.
I think this should dovetail us smoothly into divorce.
Yeah.
The figures show that divorce is on the rise. And you were talking about conjugal rights being one of the grounds upon which a person can found a claim for divorce. What is Islam's concept of divorce?
You know, if in that sense, I would want you to read Quran 30:20 first, and then we can use that as a basis.
Quran 30:20. And among his signs is that he created you, Adam, from dust, and then Hawa, that's Eve, from Adam's rib, and then his offspring from the semen.
So now go to 21. Go to 21. Sorry.
Okay, 21. And among his signs is that he created for you wives from amongst yourselves, that you may find repose in them. And he has put between you affection and mercy. Verily, in that are indeed signs for a people who reflect.
Okay. Why I want to take it from there is that he says that he has created for us wives or spouses and has put between us affection and mercy. And it is important. Affection and mercy. Rahma. Okay. Now, mercy, you can only be merciful towards somebody that you love, you have a certain affection for. So, but we all know that as human beings, there comes a point where living between two people becomes intolerable. And there is no longer affection, there is no mercy.
In fact, there's hatred.
And hatred. And that is why we see some people shoot their spouses and etc. People begin to batter
and take
their wives'
measures.
They beat their wives day, night, etc.
Is that permissible though? If you are unhappy with your wife, are you allowed to beat her?
No, you are not. And that's
really?
that's why we said that.
Is there no verse in the Quran that says a man is permitted to beat his wife?
We'll come to that one. It's a very controversial verse. We'll come to that. So if there is no longer affection and mercy, and marriage has become a living hell, Islam allows you to seek amicable, if you want, separation or dissolution. Okay? Because it is not supposed to be like that. So once the condition on which marriage was established no longer exists, then the marriage in principle is broken. Are you following me? There are people today that I know who are living in the same house with their wives, and for several months, sometimes 1 year, they are sleeping in different rooms.
So they are living separately together.
I mean, Islam doesn't permit that. Islam would allow you, in that sense, to go your separate ways so that there is harmony. All of you can have your peace and your harmony. Now, if a man beats his wife continuously, that one, the hadiths are very clear on it. The hadiths are very clear where the Prophet said, he asked a rhetorical question. The Prophet said, will you beat your wife and in the night seek to sleep with her? Would you do that? You know, the Prophet found that inconsistent because
you can't beat
conjugal relationship is supposed to be a relationship of affection and of love. That's why the white calls it love making.
Okay.
Because it is key. Are you following me? So how can you love somebody and beat them and batter them during the daytime? Then in the night, you want to make love to them. Because what you just showed during the afternoon was not love, was hatred. And then in the night, you want to show love. It's inconsistent. That's the number one point. So as for the hadiths, they are very clear. And the Prophet also talks about the fact that women are like crooked ribs. And that if we seek to correct them, we should correct them with care and etc., etc. So the hadiths are very clear. But the problem is the Quran.
I want us to take a break so that when we come back, we will deal with the bat that you must treat women with tender, with care. Otherwise, they will break. But there is a bat. When we come back, Sheikh will tell us what is this bat and how controversial it is. You're watching PM Express and we are discussing marriage in Islam. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. We are discussing marriage in Islam and my tablet is beeping with messages. Let me pick some of them and then we can open the phone lines and take contributions. We were expecting a lady with some harrowing experience of a difficult marriage. She's Muslim. I hope that we can still get her. But these are some of your messages. This one is Aziz Donla. He's texting us from Wine. He says, Surah An-Nisa has said women should be submissive to their husbands. So I want to know, as our wives are properties. Good evening to Comrade Mustafa and Dr. Pelpo. This person says, Surah An-Nisa says the women are supposed to be submissive. He wants to know whether women are properties. This one, a very important theme is being discussed today. Islam is a beautiful religion that honors and celebrates womanhood. My regards to Sheikh Hamid for his profound knowledge and submission. Smiler from Widana. This one. This is Ibrahim. This is Ibrahim from Salaga. Is contract marriage accepted in Islam? Because I heard it happened in the era of Prophet with a reason. Sheikh, this person is saying the contract marriage happened in the Prophet's time, but it happened for a reason. Is it permitted in Islam?
No, that's why I told you that marriage itself in Islam is envisaged as a contract. It is in the nature of marriage that it is a contract. For example, if we come to talk about divorce, you don't just divorce your wife. You don't just say that I don't want you, and then you take her belongings and then throw them out. There are conditions for divorce in Islam. So it is only a contract that has conditions for termination.
Okay.
So the fact that Allah himself has given you conditions in the Quran for terminating a contract, the marriage, tells you that it is a contract.
Okay.
Ab initio.
And those conditions you were talking about ought to be written in the contract. They ought to be known so that when the terms of the contract are violated, you can point to a violation and then seek divorce on the basis of.
You see, because in Islam, the human being is the agent of, there is the concept, you see, the fundamental principle of all Islamic ethics is justice, adl, because Allah is al-adl. The reason why we even envisage a day of judgment is so Allah would do justice. So it is important that as human beings, whatever we do, transaction we do between us is based on the principle of justice. Are you following me? So now, Allah gives us broad, if you want, contract terms, provisions. But within those broad ones, we can do
specific ones.
Exactly. You see, so for example, Allah says that if you divorce your wife, okay, give her a provision for her maintenance. Then he says, the rich according to his means, the poor according to his means. Now that's a broad Quranic stipulation. Now it is your marriage contract, which will then, in your marriage contract, you then have a right to specify what the exact amounts or settlements should be in case of a divorce. Because the Quran just leaves it broadly. That Allah, because of La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha, he leaves it for you. Says the rich, and he actually says the rich according to his means, the poor according to his means. So if I divorce my wife, the kind of settlement that I will give her will be different, for example, from say an Alhaji Asuma Banda, for example. Are you following me? Because we don't have the same means. You know, this is so, as Allah says, he doesn't place hardships on people, burdens on people more than they can bear.
So that you cannot execute.
So this is the kind of example I'm giving up. So Allah gives you the broad contractual arrangement that do the settlement. But the specifics of the settlement, whether it is 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000, is left to the two parties.
Because it is you who know what your personal circumstances are. You know what your means is, and so you can make a determination of what to give up.
Exactly. Are you following me? So right from the go, for example, a man and a woman can agree per their marriage contract that in case in the future this marriage doesn't work and we are going our separate ways, you will give me, say, a car, or you will give me an amount of money equivalent to what can build a 2-bedroom apartment, or etc., etc. That one is left.
And you can put that
in
your contract.
Yes, you can put that in your marriage
unless
contract.
You want to rely on Article 22 of the Constitution, the 1992 Constitution, which says that if in a marriage situation the property there is a property that is jointly acquired during the marriage, then when you are divorcing, you should share and there should be equity.
Well, of course, you see, and that is the if you want, sometimes the conflict between marrying as a Muslim and living under, if you want, secular law. Are you following me? In Islamic law, and I have done a research. I recently did a research on marriage in Dagbon. And about 80 to 85% of respondents, and this is in Muslim communities, because the topic is Islam and gender in Dagbon, said that they didn't own any properties jointly with their spouses. So if this scenario would play out in the whole of Ghana, 80 to 85%, that there was no joint ownership. The wife owns her property and the man owns his property separately. Why? Because, you see, because Islam also permits polygyny. Okay, spouses are wary of owning joint properties because, for example, if we have a joint account and I want to marry a second wife, you think my first wife will sign off money from that account for me to go and marry? It won't happen.
Let me announce the phone lines. Let me announce the phone lines so that people can join this discussion. The numbers are 030 2211 030 2211 701 or 030-2211-702 or 030-2211-703 up to 4. The numbers are on your screen. We will be opening the phone lines very soon. Please call us and contribute to this exciting discussion. I'm getting educated. Bashaik, you were explaining the reason why in Muslim-dominated communities such as Dagbon, there's no joint ownership
of property.
And the reason is simple.
I said the major reason the respondents gave me was because, especially the men, said that they have a possibility of marrying a second wife. It could happen that if they want to marry a second wife, it will be difficult for them to appropriate some of that joint property for the purposes of that second marriage. No woman would allow that. And indeed, some of the women also corroborated this. They say, well, I keep my property, he keeps his property, because I'm not going to own joint properties with him.
And run the risk of having... I'm told we have somebody, Abdul Wahab or Abdul Muhammad from Boku on the phone line. Muhammad, if you can hear me, welcome to PM Express.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
This is Abdul Mumin from Boku.
Okay, Abdul Mumin, let's hear you. What's your contribution?
He wants to speak Hausa, so let him speak.
Okay.
I want to ask Sheikh Mustafa Hamid. Like, if you wanted to marry.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, you speak Hausa, but be brief. Okay. So Abdul Mumin wants to know, Sheikh said the woman has rights over the man has rights over the woman. He wants to know what rights we are talking about. I'm sure we'll respond to that, but I hear there is Adam on the phone line. Adam, if you can hear me, welcome to PM Express. What's on your mind? Hello, Adam.
Hello.
Hello, Adam.
Yes.
Welcome to PM Express.
Thank you very much. And
yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, my contribution to the program is that.
We are listening to you.
Yeah. My contribution to the program is that I want to ask the Sheikh about what we call a dowry payment to the woman or the wife to be, and then sometimes in Islam we call it sadat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what your question is?
Yeah. My question is that I want the Sheikh to educate me about is it payment to the woman or payment to the parents? Because sometimes the parents force they place an amount or a figure on the man. Sometimes it discourages marriages.
I think you joined. I think you joined the discussion late. You joined the discussion late. Sheikh explained that this is a figure that has to be set by the wife herself, and this money goes to her. It doesn't go to the parents. The parents have no right to set it, even though Sheikh also admitted that in our current dispensation, sometimes the parents take the liberty to set the figure for the dowry. But generally, by Islamic law, it has to be the would-be wife who is setting the figure, because this money comes to her directly. There was Mumin from Boku who wanted to know what rights you were talking about. What rights does the woman enjoy?
You see, because he spoke Hausa and because I understand Hausa, you see, sometimes because of the language differences, you see, he used the word equal.
Equal, okay.
Power. Exactly. Power. Which is not exactly the same as a right.
Right, okay.
in English.
Okay.
So in other words, he misunderstood me to say that a woman has power over a man. But I already said, if he was listening, that in a marriage situation, in a family, the man is undoubtedly the head of the family. The man is the leader. And I said that Allah says that because the man spends his money in maintenance of the wife.
So if the man doesn't have and the woman is the one who has and the woman now spends, does do the table stand? Because the practical reality is that in many homes, it is the woman who is bringing the money.
Yes.
Because the man either doesn't work,
but you see,
or the man is earning very insignificant amounts. So it's the woman who is contributing significantly to the maintenance of the home.
Yeah.
Do the table stand?
No, they don't. The man,
but it is not fair.
It is because listen, you see, the leadership that exists within a marriage. Okay, marriage in Islam is a natural phenomenon. Okay, and so within that marriage setting, the man is the natural head of the family and must be obeyed as such. Are you following me? Even though that kind of leadership is not envisaged as an autocratic or dictatorial leadership. Remember, there's a famous long hadith in Buhari where Sayyidina Umar, the second caliph, went to his daughter Hafsa, who, by the way, was a wife of the Prophet. And in conversation, Hafsa told him how they have arguments with the Prophet. And sometimes they argue so heatedly with the Prophet leaves the house and goes into a circle. And Umar said, never ever argue with the Prophet again, ever. If you argue with the Prophet again, you will see. If you want anything, don't even ask the Prophet. Come and ask me.
So
then Umar
was still being the father.
Yes, then Umar went to Salama's house, who was another wife of the Prophet, and tried to give her the same counsel. And Salama said, do not interfere between the Prophet and his wives. Are you following me? So the point I'm trying to make is that when this leadership that we have as exercised by the Prophet, because the Prophet is the epitome, the Quran says that he to us is the exemplar. He's the model that we all emulate. So the Prophet was not dictatorial over his wives.
His wife could argue
with him. And if they had superior arguments, he would take it. For example, Can
we take a break? When we come back, then we take the example. You're watching PM Express. We're going for a break, a very short break. When we come back, Sheikh will give us the example of Prophet ﷺ's wives arguing with him that the Prophet was not, even though he's head of the family, is not envisaged to be a dictator. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. We are discussing marriage in Islam. That's a topic we are discussing on PM Express today. My guest is Sheikh Mustafa Abdul Hamid.
Yeah. So I was trying to answer the Boku man's question.
About power.
That when he says equal, he's trying to envisage a situation, or he thinks that I'm implying that the woman has power
over the man.
Over the man. Of course, no. As I said, undoubtedly, it is the woman who power in a family is vested in the man. That's the point that, that I want to make.
I think it should actually be authority, not authority.
Exactly.
Not
or
power.
Authority. Well, equal is also authority.
Okay.
Yeah, equal is actually properly so translated authority.
Okay.
So authority is vested in the man. You remember so when we talk about a Muslim family, for example, it is not permissible for a Muslim woman to marry a non-Muslim man. Now, if a Muslim woman marries a non-Muslim man, that family is not called
a Muslim family.
A Muslim family. It is because the head of that family is not Muslim. So it is the head that defines the character
of the family. I have to pick a call from Bolga. Ahmed, if you can. I think we just lost Ahmed on the line. Ahmed, please call back. We want to hear your view on this matter. And yes. So
are you following me? So equally, it is the man who has the equal, who has the authority.
But you are not supposed to use it capriciously.
Because the woman also has rights. For example, I said that she has a right to her body.
Let me pick a call from Farid from Nkoko. Farid, if you can hear me, welcome to PM Express. Farid, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great, welcome.
Please, the Sheikh was using polygyny, and polygyny is the woman rather marrying two men. So I want you to clarify that.
No, that's not it.
No.
Polygamy or polygyny?
No, it's polygyny.
Polyandry. Polyandry is
a woman marrying.
Polyandry.
Yes.
So
polygyny is when a man marries more than one wife. That's polygyny. That's what is allowed in Islam, not polyandry.
Okay.
You are envisaging polyandry.
Yes. Okay. Said from Kumasi, if you can hear me, welcome to PM Express.
Said from Sunyani, rather.
Said from Sunyani, sorry. Said, welcome.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
We thank you so much for that education this evening. And thanks so much for your panel at Sheikh. My question is about how frequent Muslims in a part of the world, especially in Ghana, have taken advantage of the doctrine in Islam that permits Muslims to marry two or more. That is the polygamy aspect of marriage in Islam. You understand? So I would want Sheikh to clarify that point to us properly, so that for some of us who have made it a mere right to enjoy in any form without necessarily ensuring that yes, we qualify the conditions surrounding that particular doctrine.
Said, thank you.
Respectfully, this is a question that.
Thank you, Said. Thank you, Said. I have to talk to Mariam from Tamale. Mariam, if you can hear me, what's on your mind?
Please, I want to find out if it's right for a woman to hide her property from their husband.
And please reduce your volume. Mariam, your volume is too loud. I'm getting feedback. I didn't hear your question well.
That is it permissible for a woman to hide her property from the husband?
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mariam, for your call. Okay, so
it is not permissible for both parties to hide their properties from each other, not just the woman. Why? Because of the issue of inheritance.
Okay.
Because the Quran also stipulates our inheritances. Okay? Unlike other religions or other faiths where people can write their will and dispense their property the way that they like it. In Islam, in Surah An-Nisa, verse 11 to 12, stipulates what a woman should. You see, it says, Allah commands you as regards your inheritance, your children's inheritance, to the male a portion equal to that of female, blah, blah, blah. Then it talks about men, what men should inherit from their wives, and what wives should inherit from their men, and etc.
So it's all spelled out.
So it's all spelled out. So because of that, if, for example, I have 3 houses, and I hide all of them, or I hide 2 from my wife, and then she knows that I only have 1 wife or 1 house, or my children know that I have only 1 house. You know, when I die, that would only be what would be available for the inheritance of my children and my spouse. And that would be an injustice to them. And remember, I told you that the basis of all Islamic ethics is justice. So hiding it is an injustice. And Allah hates injustice.
And actually dishonesty.
Absolutely. Are you following me? So my simple answer to her is that you cannot hide your property from either your wife or wife from husband.
Under no circumstances.
That one is a very simple matter, you know, because once you are alive, he cannot appropriate it for himself. I mean, Islam allows a woman to own her property and do as she wants with it. She can only consult you. In Ashura, there's a surah, Quran 42, it's called the chapter of consultation. Allah says that the basis on which human beings should conduct, or Muslims should conduct their relationship, is mutual consultation. So she's obliged to consult you, and you are obliged to also consult her, okay, so on matters of developing your property and etc.
But the husband cannot say, because he's the head of the family, he has authority to determine how the woman's property should be used.
No, he cannot. The woman has a right to decide how to use her property in her lifetime.
And if he were to insist?
Well, I'm sure a Muslim judge or the one who brought about the marriage would enlighten.
And somebody wanted to know about the grounds upon which a man can marry more than one.
I'm coming. I got the specific verse on the question about who to whom the dowry should be paid. Surah An-Nisa, verse 4. It says, and give to the women. Okay? Wa antun nisaa. Nisa is women. So give to the women their mahar. So it's very explicit. So the mahar, the dowry.
Yes.
It is for the woman.
And not,
it is not for the parents. No.
Okay. I really wish that we had a lot more time. We may have to do a second round of this so that we can go into the question of divorce properly, because we haven't spoken about the types of divorce, the grounds upon which divorce can be founded.
Exactly. So let me quickly answer his question on marriage. On
45 seconds.
Yes, he says, and if you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with the orphans, then marry with the orphan girls, then marry women of your choice, 2 or 3 or 4. But if you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with them, then only one. Okay.
So justice.
And you see, justice. I told you, I kept talking about justice because in Islam, you cannot talk about Islam without the concept of justice.
So if you cannot deal justly with 2 or 3 or 4 women, marry one.
Marry only one.
Okay. I'm told our time is up.
We'll continue.
I'm sure that we will do a second round of this, and we will go into the issues properly. We will deal with divorce, the grounds upon which divorce can happen, what rights accrue to the woman when divorce is happening, and all of those other related matters. That'll be next week. I'm most grateful to Sheikh Mustafa Abdul Hamid. He had to leave Cape Coast to come and join us for this discussion. We are profoundly grateful to you, Sheikh, for joining us on this discussion. God willing, we will bring you another exciting discussion. This is repeated tomorrow after News File. Next week, we will bring you another exciting discussion on PM Express. Until then, my name is Malik Abbas Dabu. Bye-bye.